at stage 7 here, soon as some little tiny hint of agitation and dullness, or subtle dullness arises, immediately dispelled. So let's have a look here in Attention Evolution, some comments about stage 7. So this is on page 117. The power by which the 7th stage is achieved is enthusiasm. The practice itself now fills you with joy. It is this that motivates you to continue in the practice, meeting the increasingly subtle challenges ahead. Having overcome the medium degree of laxity, subtle laxity remains, in which the object of mindfulness appears vividly, but your attention is slightly slack. No one but a highly advanced meditator is even capable of recognizing such a subtle degree of laxity. It is detected only in relation to the exceptionally high degree of clarity of which the trained mind is capable. Subtle excitation also occurs from time to time. As recommended previously, when laxity sets in, you arouse your attention, and when excitation occurs, you loosen up slightly. At the 7th stage, these subtle attentional imbalances are swiftly recognized due to your highly honed faculty of introspection, and they're easily remedied. The Tibetan word gom, usually translated as meditation, has the connotation of familiarity, and it is the quality of your experience at the stage of fully pacified. This is the quality of your experience at this stage. You have become highly adept at balancing and refining your attention, and the rest of the journey to the realization of shamatha is all downhill. Sounds good. It's good. So let's look now at stage 8. So stage 8 here, of course the monkey's completely gone. There's no black left on the back of the elephant. So stage 8 here, which is called one-pointed attention, now all we need to do is put a little bit of effort to start the meditation, and then our meditation runs flawlessly without any hint of agitation, subtle agitation or subtle dullness. And so here in Attention Evolution, page 131, brief comment. By continuing in the sustained cultivation of shamatha, you will eventually you will achieve the 8th stage, known as single-pointed attention. You have now realized a high degree of unification of attention. Wherever you direct it, your awareness is coherent and highly focused. From this point onward, you can flow with the momentum of the practice with little or no effort. You can sustain a high level of concentration, free of the imbalances of even the subtlest laxity and excitation, for at least 3 hours or so. Only the slightest degree of effort at the beginning of each session is needed to ward off these obstacles, and you continue in your practice motivated by the power of enthusiasm. For the first time, the flow of attention proceeds without any interruptions by laxity or excitation, and the overall quality of this state of samadhi is one of stillness. So now we're here at stage 4. Our mind has become completely still now. Whereas in the preceding stages, involuntary thoughts arose like a river slowly flowing through a valley. Now the mind feels calm, like an ocean unmoved by waves. And then if we go to the next stage, stage 9, which is called attentional balance, here the meditator in the cave, now it becomes effortless, that we can flow in and out of meditation effortlessly, and we can sustain this state for long periods of time. So let's have a look again in Attention Evolution, page 143. With only the slightest exertion of effort, you proceed from the 8th attentional stage to the 9th, known as attentional balance. You are now able to maintain flawless samadhi effortlessly and continuously for at least 4 hours. Due to the power of deep familiarization with this training, you can slip into meditation free of even the subtlest traces of laxity and excitation with no effort at all. This is not to say that your attention is irreversibly balanced. If for some reason you discontinue the practice, you will find that laxity and excitation erode your attentional balance. They have not been irreversibly eliminated. But if you maintain a contemplative lifestyle and keep your attention honed through regular practice, this wonderful degree of sanity can be yours for life. Still haven't achieved shamatha.
Tomorrow?
So shamatha, huh?
No. It's a joke.
Shamatha is this diagram in the middle at the top here.
Then what's samadhi?
Sorry?
Samadhi, what do you mean?
Samadhi just means concentration. Samadhi is the Sanskrit word for concentration, and we can cultivate many levels of concentration or many levels of samadhi. The one that we're focusing on, the level we're focusing on here is called shamatha. In the Theravada Buddhist traditions, they focus on a different level of samadhi called jhana. They say they're doing jhana practice, and there are 4 levels of jhana, but they're all samadhi. So, to get from stage 9 to shamatha, which is the diagram in the middle at the top here, there's a sort of radical transition occurring. And we achieve what's called physical and mental pliancy, this flexibility of serviceability of body and mind. And we'll describe it in more detail, but just briefly, we see here the meditator flying through the sky. So this is symbolising this physical pliancy. It's said that when we achieve shamatha, our body feels light like cotton. And the meditator riding on the elephant of the mind here is this mental pliancy, which means when we achieve shamatha, then we can direct our mind to whatever we want without any resistance whatsoever. So that's mental pliancy. So let's have a look at how this transition happens. It's very nicely described here in Attention Revolution on page 155. So let's look at that. It says, following the realization of the 9th stage of attentional balance, you are primed to achieve shamatha. The 9 preceding stages entail many incremental changes, but the actual accomplishment of shamatha involves a radical transition in your body and mind. You will be like a butterfly emerging from its cocoon. This shift is characterized by specific experiences that take place within a discrete, relatively brief period of time. According to accounts from the Indo-Tibetan tradition of Buddhism, the first sign of the achievement of shamatha is the experience of a sense of heaviness and numbness on the top of the head. This allegedly happens to anyone who experiences this transition, regardless of the specific method followed. It is said to feel as if a palm were being placed on the top of your head. It is not unpleasant or harmful, just unusual. Something remarkable must be taking place in the cortical region of your brain at this point, but so far no one has monitored the brain correlates of this shift using magnetic resonance imaging or an electroencephalograph. This physical sensation on the top of the head is symptomatic of a shift in your nervous system or network of vital energies that is correlated with gaining freedom from mental dysfunction, a general state of mental imbalance characterized by stiffness, rigidity, and unwieldiness. Consequently, you achieve a state of mental pliancy in which your mind is fit and supple like never before. From a contemplative perspective, when the mind is dysfunctional or prone to laxity and excitation, it is hard to generate enthusiasm for healing the afflictions of your mind or for devoting yourself to virtuous mental activity. Once you are free of such mental dysfunction, you can focus your mind without resistance on any meaningful object or task. And such a mind is now said to be fit or serviceable. This is the key to achieving optimal mental performance. Following this sense of pressure on the top of your head, you experience the movement of vital energies moving in your body. And when they have coursed everywhere throughout your body, you feel as if you are filled with the power of this dynamic energy. You are now freed of physical dysfunction, so your body feels buoyant and light like never before. Both your body and mind are now imbued with an exceptional degree of pliancy, which makes them remarkably fit for engaging in all kinds of mental training and other meaningful activities. When physical pliancy initially arises, the vital energies catalyse an extraordinary sense of physical bliss, which then triggers an equally exceptional experience of mental bliss. This rush of physical and mental rapture is transient, which is a good thing, for it so captivates the attention you can do little else except enjoy it. Gradually it subsides and you are freed from the turbulence caused by this intense joy. Your attention settles down in perfect stability and clarity. You have now achieved Shamatha. Sounds pretty good. There's one diagram left at the top right hand corner. So what we see here now is the meditator on the elephant of the mind, and in their right hand is a sword. This is the sword of wisdom. So this is the Vipashyana practice, the sword of wisdom to cut through ignorance and mental afflictions. So now we see two numbers here, 32 and 33. And if we go over the page, they say, 32 says, the root of samsara is cut by the union of Shamatha and Vipashyana observing emptiness. And 33 says, equipped with mindfulness and introspection, seek the correct view of emptiness. So it's on the basis of Shamatha that our Vipashyana practice, to come to realise emptiness, to come to realise nothing exists independently, we can use this sword of wisdom to cut through ignorance, mental afflictions and suffering. So what this doesn't mean, of course, is that first we need to achieve Shamatha, then we can start Vipashyana practice. If we have that idea, we'll be waiting a long time before we start Vipashyana practice, and you probably will find that you won't get anywhere near Shamatha anyway, because you'll need some Vipashyana to help you along the way. Because if we can start doing some Shamatha, and the mind starts to become a little bit more calm, more clear, more focused, then we use that mind to investigate in Vipashyana practice and come to have a little taste of emptiness. Then that little taste will already start to have an impact on the mental afflictions to reduce them a little bit, which means then when we go back into Shamatha, we have less interference, so we can go a little bit deeper, which means then we can go a bit deeper in our Vipashyana, and so they'll feed each other. And so eventually, of course, they'll become what's called unified. That's what's said here. We'll have this union of Shamatha and Vipashyana. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means in the second half of the retreat in the context of Vipashyana. That's probably about all I wanted to cover on this diagram. Is there any questions about anything here?
Are there examples? I'll ask you this way. Is it common for people, for like great meditators or like monks or etc., to tell or to say or to exhibit their level in Shamatha? Is it like I'm a stage 8 monk, the Dalai Lama is of course 9, and I don't know.
Yeah, so the question is it common for people to talk about where they are in the path, not only here but in terms of Vipashyana? The answer is no, because, well, yes and no, depends the context. In public, not so much, because it's not very helpful to talk about these things in public, because often they attract a lot of negative attention. But certainly in private, if that meditator has students and they believe that by saying something about where they are, the student would get inspired, then they would say something. So that's fairly common. If they believe that by saying something to the student would take it the wrong way and somehow worship them and not get inspired to practice, they wouldn't say anything. And certainly, once we start to move along not only this Shamatha path, but the Vipashyana path, what we really appreciate is how much more there is to do. So actually, one of the very common qualities that we develop is humility. And so generally, if you see someone in public walking around boasting how advanced they are, that's often a sign they're a little bit delusional, and you need to be very careful. In fact, there's a very nice saying, I think it comes to Tibetan Buddhism, but I'm not sure, but the saying is that the harvest of good qualities does not grow on the rocky peaks of pride. They grow in the low, fertile valleys of humility. Because what can often happen is once we start to get a little taste of these things, experiences, then our spiritual practice gets hijacked by the ego. And the ego goes, I'm advanced, I'm spiritual, I'm better than you. And so then, of course, our practice is going nowhere. So we need to be careful that it doesn't get hijacked by the ego. And that's where, of course, the compassion wing of practice and also the wisdom of the Vipashyana wing can be very helpful. So again, yes, I mean, in private, you will, if your teacher has some qualities and they believe that, and you're a student of theirs, and they believe that by them telling you or exhibiting something, you'll get inspired to practice, and they will show that. But in public, you won't see it so much.
I ask it also because there's like Alan Wallace is right, there are accounts of people who attain Shamatha or attain this and this level.
Sure.
This would have to be somehow communicated among people. It's because it's, for first and foremost, it's a very internal experience.
Sure. And what would happen, and again, what would happen historically is that the great practitioners would, of course, talk to each other and help each other, and so they would basically know where they're at, and then basically later someone would say, well, this person, they achieved this and they achieved that. So they usually wouldn't sort of say, I did this, I did that, but they would comment on their contemporaries who they have a lot of communication with, and they'd say, well, this person really achieved this and did that. So that's where a lot of these historical accounts come from, like this.
Intuitively, this kind of progress seems to be encouraged by focusing on single point and concentration, right?
The Shamatha practice on a single object?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So making the mind as an object seems to me a bit weird, like a bit not in the focus direction, because the mind is full of changing objects.
Right.
And unclear flux movement.
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. So it seems like for Shamatha we should be focusing on a single object, but the mind doesn't really seem to be a single object. But even the sensations of the breath is changing in every moment. It's not, I mean, in fact, there is no static object anywhere in the universe, is there? I mean, there's nothing there that doesn't change. So even the sensations of the breath is constantly changing in every moment, but it's at least, it's what's called one field. So the sensations of breath is the sensory field. The mental object is the mental field. So yes, initially, of course, there's lots of thoughts and so forth going on, but what we see here, of course, in this progress is that when we get towards the higher levels here, there's just that stillness. So we're just resting in that stillness. So then it really comes down to sort of, it's not even really an object at that point. It's a bit hard, a bit awkward to say that the still mind or awareness is an object, but then certainly the amount of change going on has come down to just that. Does that sort of make sense?
Not really, not really. It won't happen with an object like a pen or an egg. Also,
Sorry, what?
I'm asking, will I not achieve the same results with an easier object like a pen or an egg? And also to that point, in the book Mahamudra, is going to say that most or all the gurus,
Most of the
gurus chose the mind to practice, and that's why they teach it. They practice and people. But there's no reason why. Right? They can choose the mind. And the same here. It's if the results are not the same, okay, but it is more difficult.
A visual object, as I mentioned earlier, we can start shamatha practice by looking at a pen or a rock or anything. But then we're using our senses. And what you find actually, even in the middling stages here, is that because it's the sense faculties start to go dormant, because the mental faculty is what's really doing the focus. So actually, you won't be able to focus on a sense object, so all the way. Even the breath, the sensations of the breath will disappear because the mental faculty, because the sense faculty is shut down. But fortunately, with using the breath as the object, what happens is that before the sense faculty shut down, you get what's called the acquired sign. It's a mental image relating to the air element, the breath. And that can be one of many different things. It can appear in many different forms. In fact, maybe I'll read out it's here in Attention Evolution. I think, from memory.
We definitely need to know what page.
Page 64. So let's have a look at what he says there. In the phases of mindfulness of breathing thus far, you have been attending in various ways to the tactile sensations of the breath. However, to continue all the way along the path of shamatha, eventually you must shift your attention from the tactile sensations of breathing to an acquired sign, a symbol of the air element that appears before the mind's eye as you progress in shamatha practice. To different people, acquired signs associated with the breath practice may appear like a star, a cluster of gems or pearls, a wreath of flowers, a puff of smoke, a cobweb, a cloud, a lotus flower, a wheel, or the sun or the moon. The path of mindfulness of breathing, which here explicitly turns into mindfulness with breathing, as soon as such a sign arises, shift your attention to this sign. This will be your object of attention as you proceed along the rest of the 9 stages leading to shamatha. At first, your sign will arise only sporadically, so when it disappears, return to the previous sensations of the breath. But eventually it will appear more regularly and steadily, and from that point onward, focus your attention on this object. As you progress in your... Okay, that's going on to something else. And the second part you're saying is that most of the gurus use the mind. I think that was really in the context of Mahamudra and Dzogchen practice. And the reason being is that in Mahamudra and Dzogchen practice, in Vipashyana, we are investigating the mind. In other systems of practice, like in the Galuk, when we do Vipashyana, we tend to investigate the person. Where is the me that seems to be here? So when we do Mahamudra Dzogchen, we're investigating the mind itself. Where is this mind that seems to be here? So therefore, it makes sense as a prelude to that, as a basis for that investigation of the mind, to use the mind for the Shamatha practice, to become familiar with the mind, because that's what we're going to be investigating in Vipashyana practice. So therefore, they tie in very well, Shamatha on the mind, Vipashyana on the mind, with the same basis. So that's why in the text it says most of the gurus accept using the mind as the object of Shamatha, because in Vipashyana we're going to investigate that mind.
But still, I can't understand what is the mind as an object of Shamatha. Like, maybe mind content or mind, I don't know, but what is the mind as an object?
Yeah. So here, remember, the object is the space of the mind and whatever mental events arise in that space. So in the mind, we can perceive 6 types of objects: visual, sound, smell, taste, tactile sensation, and mental objects. Mental objects, of course, are thoughts, emotions, memories, and so forth. That's what we're focusing on, just mental objects. None of these 5 sense objects. We're not focusing on sounds, sensations, visual, smell, taste. So we can observe everything, all 6 fields, but you're right, there's too much different things. So that's not useful for Shamatha. I mean, that's a practice of just what's sometimes called open awareness, just observe everything. And in fact, that's what we would do in daily life. In daily life, we would do this. We would observe those 6 fields because we have to pay attention to what's going on around us. But as a Shamatha practice, as you're right, we need to narrow down. So we narrow down from 6 down to 1, down to the mental sphere. We're only observing thoughts, emotions, memories, and so forth. And then, of course, what's going to happen is we're observing all of these mental events, and then they become less and less and less, and eventually the mind will go completely quiet. And so what we're observing then is just that space of the mind. There's no mental events there. So the object here is just that space of the mind.
It's not a question. It's more like it feels kind of pointless to learn this because
Pointless.
who is going together? You know, I think this time I came here with the notion that I suck in Shamatha practice, and actually it made me better. This kind of like I stop resisting. That I should be better. I should be good.
I should be better.
So I stopped resisting. So yeah, I'm not that good. So what's the point of talking about?
The point is there's a couple of points. One point is, of course, to have a clear understanding of the direction we are going.
It seems like only monks will get there.
But also to be inspired that this is possible. And so, of course, if we look at that and we go, well, I don't have any chance of getting to Shamatha, so I won't bother. I think this would be a big mistake. Because whatever level we are, if we put whatever effort we can manage and we just get up to even stage 2 or 3, I mean, already our life is dramatically improved. Because even at stage 3, we can focus on things for a long period of time. If we get distracted, we quickly come back. So if we can even just get to stage 3, you'll notice a big improvement in your life already. Big improvement. It's not like no improvement until we get to Shamatha. And so, and also what you'll find, and often people say, yeah, but, you know, I can only do 15 or 20 minutes or so. But again, what you're going to find is if you do whatever effort you can manage and you start to get a little bit of a taste of it, then that will inspire us to go further, and you may find actually then your priorities in your life shift a little bit. Now often our priorities is I need to work a lot of hours, I need to get a lot of money, I need to get a career, I need to all this stuff. And then sort of this meditation, well, if I can sort of squeeze it in a little bit there, I'll do a little bit, otherwise I won't bother. But then, of course, when we're caught up in all this stuff, you know, what comes with it, of course, is a lot of frustration, stress, anxiety.